Good morning, everyone, here on Live Now from Fox, everyone. We appreciate you joining us here today. It is getting 6 o'clock on the East Coast, 5 o'clock right here in Chicago as we continue to bring you the top stories, headlines from across the country. Everyone here today, always great to be with you. We'll start going in just a bit. And as always, everyone, we appreciate our viewers from across the country and around the world watching with us today here on Live Now from Fox. We're taking a live look at the beautiful city of Chicago, just days away before Christmas. And we'll have some top headlines and stories here in just a bit. But first, let me just say hi, everyone. Mike Page here. Thank you so much for joining us here today on Live Now from Fox. Always great to be here with you. Just 2 days away from the big Christmas holiday, and we're hoping that everyone is having a safe holiday with friends and family so far, and staying healthy at the same time. Live look right now at a very, very dark White House there as they get going there. 6 o'clock out on the East Coast there right now. And what we are doing right now is really monitoring. Could today be the day that we get some insight on the Kim Potter trial here? For jury has been deliberating for quite some time. Could today find out that it'd be possibly a hung jury, deadlocked at some point? We'll wait and see on that. We'll have full coverage for you right here on Live Now from Fox as well. Looks like we're getting a feed in. I don't know if I could take it just yet. Let's just hold on 1 second right here as I see where this is all coming from here. Okay, so we don't have that feed just yet, but we'll wait on that. Well, we do have a story to get to. The Surgeon General making the push to make vaccine boosters a reality for all.
Let me give a brief visual description. I'm a middle-aged white woman with curly brown chin-length hair wearing a dark blue suit and a white blouse with a background with the ACL and HHS logos behind me. We have CART and we have ASL as accommodations for anyone who needs it. For those of you who aren't familiar with ACL, our mission is to make community living a reality for all people, regardless of disability or age. We have disability and aging networks in every state and territory and in local communities across the country who provide direct services and advocacy to make this a reality. As you all know too well, people with disabilities and older adults have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. And that's particularly true for disabled and older adults who are also people of color, with Black, Indigenous, and Hispanic people being especially hit hard. Older adults and many people with disabilities and chronic conditions face higher risks for hospitalization or death if infected by COVID. And that risk is heightened for people living in congregate settings like nursing homes or group homes. That is why ACL has been laser focused on the best tool we have to protect people, vaccines. Our goal has been to get shots in arms of every person with a disability or older adult who's willing. But we know to do that, we have to address the barriers that too many people face in accessing vaccines. Our disability and aging networks have been the boots on the ground, helping people get vaccinated, aided by additional funding from a partnership between ACL and the CDC. Our networks have engaged in vaccine outreach and education, held accessible clinics for older adults, people with disabilities and their families, provided transportation to and in-person supports at vaccination sites, and identified and provided in-home vaccinations for those who need it. Using funding from the CDC, ACL has set up a national hotline called the Disability Information and Access Line, or DIAL, and expanded the Elder Care Locator national line to help connect people with local resources provided by our networks to assist with vaccine access. You all have been innovative, creative, and forged new partnerships with local and state public health officials, other local disability and aging organizations, and among yourselves. And just one example of partnerships, just yesterday, Advancing States, U.S. Aging, Meals on Wheels America, the National Association of Nutrition and Aging Services Programs, and the National Council on Aging teamed up to issue a statement encouraging people to get vaccinated and boosted. And because of your tireless work, virtually all older adults and most people with disabilities have received at least a first dose. I can't thank you enough for the work that you've already done to reach the unvaccinated. It's been truly life-saving. But now we have a new challenge, and I know we're ready for it, and we're going to hear about it in a moment from the Surgeon General on the latest about vaccines and why boosters are so important now to protect ourselves as we head into this winter. As you'll hear, we need a full court press to make sure everyone who's not yet vaccinated gets vaccinated, and that everyone who has been vaccinated gets a booster as soon as they're eligible. That's why we're here today, to recommit ourselves to making sure we are working together to do everything possible to prevent hospitalizations and deaths by helping the people we serve get booster shots. At ACL, we're committed to do everything we can to support this important work. For our grantees, later this week, we'll be sending you a letter highlighting the funding and flexibilities for vaccine and booster activities, and sharing a new booster flyer that anyone can use or even co-brand to get out the word. We are also working on a new collection of promising practices and strategies from across the network on boosters that will also get to you this week. And we'll continue adding vaccine and booster resources to ACL's website at acl.gov/COVID-19. Finally, for anyone who's on today's call and needs assistance in getting vaccinated or a booster, you can contact the dial line at 888-677-1199 or the Elder Care Locator at 1-800-677-1116. I am so honored now to welcome Surgeon General Vivek Murthy. I'll be asking him a number of questions that we already received, and then we'll invite audience questions. So please, as you hear him speak, please put questions in the chat. Dr. Murthy, as many of you know, is serving his second tour as U.S. Surgeon General, having served in the same role in the Obama administration from 2014 to 2017. During this public health emergency, we are so lucky to have a Surgeon General with his expertise, passion, and compassion. And he's here today because he knows how important all of you are to the health of the nation, and that without you, we cannot meet our shared goal of reaching the communities that have been most impacted by the pandemic. Surgeon General, welcome, and thank you for joining me today. I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Allison. I'm so glad that we have this time together. And first, I just want to thank you so much, Allison, for your leadership of ACL and for looking out for people in communities all across our country, especially now after 2 years in this pandemic, when many people have had even more struggles than they may have normally had in this ever-changing environment. The work you do is so incredibly important. So thank you for your leadership and service. And I just want to say also to everyone who's tuning in today, thank you for being here. I know that there's some questions we're going to go through about COVID more broadly, about Omicron specifically, about vaccines, boosters, and I'm happy to talk to any and all of those questions. But I do want to say one thing up front, which is that I just want to acknowledge that this has been a challenging 2 years for so many people. And I know that some of us have lost loved ones to this virus. Some of us have had our lives turned upside down. We may have kids or grandkids, who've had their school interrupted during the early months of the pandemic. In some way or another, like many of us have seen our lives change in some way. And that can be exhausting. It can be tiring. It can be scary at times. So I just want people to know, if you're feeling any or all of those feelings, please know that you're not alone. Please know there's something wrong with you. This is a very normal response to a very difficult situation that we've all gone through this past couple of years. One thing that has become very clear to me, though, is that if we are going to get through not just this moment, but whatever may come in the future, we have to find ways to stick together and support one another, whether that's we strengthening our bonds with family and friends, whether it's looking out for the people who live around us in our neighborhood. We only get through these pandemics together, and it's when we're splintered, when we fall, sort of separate, and we become isolated from one another. That's actually when these pandemics become exponentially harder to manage. So there has been a lot of progress made in the last 2 years. I know it may not always feel like that, but we've learned so much more about how to protect ourselves, how to protect each other, how to gather with loved ones safely, even in the midst of a pandemic, how to get our kids back in school. And now more than 95% of our kids are back in school full time, which is great. So we've learned a lot, but we still have a little bit of a ways to go. And as Allison mentioned, one of the mainstays, one of the backbones of our recovery, if you will, or getting through this pandemic is going to be making sure that we are protected from this virus. And that's where the vaccine and the boosters really come in. So with that, let me turn it back to Allison to take us through some of our questions, and I'll look forward to the conversation.
Great. Let's start with the question about why are boosters so important, and what do older adults and people with disabilities really need to know?
Well, so I'm glad we're talking about this, because it's first important to know that boosters are not an unusual thing as far as vaccines are concerned. There are many vaccines that require boosters. If you've ever gotten a tetanus shot, every few years, that's a booster shot that you've gotten. It's also true that many vaccines require multiple doses. Take, for example, the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine, which is something that kids get. And I have small kids, and so these vaccines are fresh in my head. And they may be for you if you've got small kids or small grandkids. But this is a vaccine that requires multiple doses. And then once you get multiple doses, you're good for a while. And so the truth is that the concept of getting an additional dose is not unusual. Here's why we started recommending it. Because we noticed in the data that the vaccines were giving people really good protection, especially keeping them out of the hospital, saving their lives. But we were noticing that some of the protection against mild and moderate infections was starting to decline over time. And so that's why we thought that the booster would be helpful. Now,
all right, everybody, you are watching Live Now from Fox. Everybody, wanted to show you that from the U.S. Surgeon General as we continue on right here. Well, one of the main stories that we are following for you on Live Now from Fox has to do with the Kim Potter trial, as soon jury deliberations will begin for the final day before the holiday break. And there is some reporting out there that there could be a possible mistrial or a deadlock situation, which would happen in a hung jury situation. So we'll continue to wait on those movements right now. But I want to show you some highlights from when Kim Potter was on the stand in her own defense last week.
While you were in high school, besides being an explorer, did you do anything else?
I had jobs.
Okay, what was your job?
My first job was at a gas station.
What did you do there?
Clerk, cashier.
And did you continue that job throughout high school?
Yes, and into college.
Okay, so your next visit was college.
Yes.
Where did you go to college?
St. Mary's College in Winona, Minnesota.
And that's about, what, 70 miles from here, 80?
Yeah, it's down towards La Crosse.
Okay, it's in Winona.
Yes.
And what was your major at St. Mary's?
Criminal justice and sociology with an emphasis on elderly studies or geriatric sociology.
Why did you take those courses?
I wanted to go into law enforcement, and I had an interest in serving the older community and understanding their needs and wants.
Did you graduate from St. Mary's?
Yes, I did.
And was that a 3-year program, 4
It was a
years?
4-year program. I finished it in 3.5 because I had an internship in the summer.
And where did you internship?
The Columbia Heights Police Department.
Columbia Heights Police Department?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you do at the Columbia Heights Police Department?
I was assigned to an officer who was in their community-oriented policing program.
Did you also continue your explorer career while in college?
I stopped being an explorer after my freshman year, and then I role-played at the annual conference.
What does that mean?
Every year the Explorer program had an annual conference at Breezy Point Resort, and they needed role players, and they like to use students or people that were in law enforcement.
So you graduated from St. Mary's,
Yes.
and you What did you do after that?
After that, I would have gone to skills in the summer of 1994.
Okay, and what do you mean by that?
I went to skills.
What does that mean?
I went to the police certification program so I could get hired.
And where was that at?
Alexandria Technical College?
In Alexandria, Minnesota?
Correct.
So everybody knows about 120 miles, 30
Yes.
from here? And did you stay there while you were being educated?
Yes.
What kind of a program was that? How long was it?
It was 10 or 12 weeks.
And what do you mean, is that where you obtain your skills to apply as a police officer?
Yes, it was a hands-on training. I had the college education, the book knowledge, and then I went there for my skills program or my hands-on part from getting my license.
After this program, did you go out and try and get a job in law enforcement?
Yes, I did.
And were you successful at first?
Yes.
Well, did you have a job at Anoka?
Yeah, I worked at the Anoka Metro Regional Treatment Center because I graduated in January, or I'm sorry, in December. I couldn't go to skills until the next summer, so I got a job.
All right, so, but you worked skills, you were in Alexandria, correct?
Yes.
And the job you got was at Anoka State Hospital?
Yes.
That was between your skills? Say that again.
So
Slowly.
I got hired there in February, and I worked for a year on a calendar year. But the Anoka City Police Department would allow their students to, or their employees, I'm sorry, to go to skills and still have a job on weekends or when they would get back before they got hired as a law enforcement officer.
So at Anoka State Hospital, what did you do?
I was a security officer.
And Anoka State Hospital is basically a detox center now, is that right?
No, it had a detox. It had a countywide detox and a detox program. It also had drug and alcohol abuse rehabilitation and mental illness.
And what did you do there? You're in security?
Yes.
Does that mean you had to deal with the folks that are staying there, the residents?
Yes.
And were you successful in that?
Yes.
After working there, where did you go next?
I left there and got hired at the City of Brooklyn Center.
In what year were you hired at the Brooklyn Center Police Department?
1995.
And when were you sworn in?
February the 27th.
Of 1995?
Correct.
Who was that you're swearing?
My mother and my father.
So after you're sworn in, you started working as a Brooklyn Center police officer?
Yes.
And what year was that again?
1995.
So that would be, my math, 26 years before you resigned? Is
Yes.
that a fair statement?
Yes.
When you worked as a police officer at Brooklyn Center throughout those 26 years, did you remain a patrol officer all during that time?
I did.
And why was that? Why didn't you attempt to go up the ladder like the other officers we've heard from?
I liked my work. I enjoyed working with community. I didn't want to be in an administrative role.
But did you also, even though you were a patrol officer, you did take part in other programs, for example, the FTO program, right?
Yes, I did.
And that's the field training?
Yes, I was a field training officer for many years.
How many years?
I don't have an exact number, 10 to 15.
And we've learned in this case what a field training officer does, but very briefly, what did you do?
I would get probationers in different stages of their training, either in their first phase, their second phase, their third phase, or their final phase. Usually the primary phase or the first phase and the final phase were always with the same FTO. And then other FTOs would train the other two stages.
And why did you continue to do that for so many years?
I felt that I had knowledge and mentorship that I could help young officers develop into somebody I would want to work with and my partners would want to work with.
There are other programs that you volunteered for or joined while
Yes.
you were a police officer, is that correct?
Yes.
And after you became a police officer, What was the first program that you joined or volunteered?
I became an Explorer advisor for our Explorer post.
And what's an Explorer post? Is that the younger people that are?
Yes, the program through the Boy Scouts of America.
And in that program, you teach them about policing, is that right?
Yes.
And after that Explorers program that you joined, what else did you do as a police officer?
I was on the domestic abuse response team. I was also a crisis negotiator.
Let's stop at the domestic abuse program. How long were you on that? Approximately.
10, 12 years, maybe more, maybe less.
And what did that program entail?
We would respond, so officers would go out on domestic abuse situations or domestic calls, and if there was a victim of a crime or an arrest made, or not an arrest made, we would follow up the next day with the victims to see that they were getting the things they needed, like domestic advocates, walking them through getting order for protections if they had questions, and then helping them and checking in with them through the court process.
And did you enjoy doing that?
Yes.
Why?
Sometimes there were great successes, and sometimes there were very sad failures.
There's another program that you're involved in, was a hostage program?
I was a crisis negotiator for the parent umbrella of the EOU team, the Emergency Operations Unit.
And what did you do in that?
I was a crisis negotiator.
What does that mean?
We would go out on barricaded subjects, or we would go out with the, I guess a SWAT team would be the easiest way to describe it, on warrants. We would respond to calls where there may be people in danger.
And was your job to try and negotiate with the subject and get him to submit to being arrested?
Yes, he or she.
Was that your main job?
No, I was always a patrol officer.
No, I mean, as far as a hostage negotiator, that's what you did.
Yes, I was a crisis negotiator.
And what other programs were you in?
I was on the Law Enforcement Memorial Association Honor Guard.
And what is that?
So the parent is the Minnesota Law Enforcement Memorial Association. They do a lot of work to help survivors and their families.
And we're going to continue to have highlights here of the Kim Potter trial. We're going to take a quick 2-minute break here for some of you. Stay right here with us soon. Jury will begin deliberations for the final day before holiday break.
For approximately a year or two, and then I went to the casket team.
Well, what's the color team?
The color team carries flags.
And the casket team?
We would carry the casket or the urn of the fallen officer and then fold their flag.
And would you be in contact also with the victim or the deceased family?
Sometimes with the family, a lot of times with the chief of police, because I would have to have to give the folded flag to the police chief.
And this was throughout the state of Minnesota?
Yes.
And these were police officers killed in the line of duty?
Yes.
Or other law enforcement officers?
Most 99% of it would be killed in the line of duty, or we would do some retiree funerals.
Any other programs you're involved in?
I did a lot of crime prevention work for our police department and other presentations.
Crime prevention presentations?
Yes.
What were those?
I was assigned an apartment complex in the city, and I would meet with management, and we would do some programming for their residents as far as personal safety, locking your car doors, taking valuables out of your cars, just regular safety in an apartment complex. And then I would do some other presentations on robbery prevention for banks in the city.
By the way, when you were doing the carrying caskets for that program, were you aware of officers that were killed in the line of duty by making a traffic stop?
Yes, Sean Patrick from Mendota Heights.
Objection, Your Honor. Move to strike.
The objection is overruled. I'll let the answer stand.
During your 26 years as a police officer, did you ever receive any complaints for abusing your power?
No.
Did you ever receive any complaints from the public?
No.
In training, did you attend all the training sessions required by the Brooklyn Center Police Department while you were there?
Yes.
And with respect to gun training, laser training, you attended all those too, right?
Yes, I did.
And did you pay attention?
Yes, I did.
With respect to that, in your approximation, and I'm not asking for exact numbers, but with respect to the training, what would you say the amount of training was for the firearm, for the gun, and the amount of training for the laser? What would be the percentages there?
For the firearms, it would be probably 80%. We spent a lot more time on firearms than we did on taser.
And tasers didn't come into the being until years after you're a law enforcement officer, right?
Yes, I believe trainers in this courtroom had said 2002 or 2003.
And you started as a law enforcement officer, what year?
1995.
With respect to tasers, I say lasers, respect to tasers, there's been evidence in the case that you had a Taser 7, is that correct?
Yes.
And the evidence in that was that the Taser 7 was shaped like a gun, fair statement?
Yes.
And the Taser 7 had a dark black, or at least a dark handle, and a dark top. Do you remember that?
Objection, leaving.
I'm trying.
The objection is overruled. You may answer.
Yes.
The Taser that you received, was it approximately a month before April 11th that you received this Taser? Do you remember?
In the courtroom, I was told I received it on March the 26th.
Okay. And also, while we're there, with respect to these tasers and testing them, the rule that we read said should test the electronics every day. Is that right?
Yes.
And there is testimony that you didn't test yours a couple days. Is that right?
Yes, that's what I was told.
And do you agree with that you didn't test it?
I don't recall if I would have or wouldn't have.
And was that an important feature for law enforcement officers with new tasers
No.
that never used them since they had them?
Correct.
And while we're there, did you ever use a taser, use it by actually shooting it in all of your years' career as a law enforcement officer?
I would take my taser out on rare occasions, but I don't believe I ever deployed it.
Okay, when you take your taser out, it's to de-escalate what is going on. Is that a fair statement?
Sometimes, or to prepare for what might be behind a door. Sometimes an officer has a gun and sometimes an officer has a taser out.
All right. And now the taser that was switched from you, did that go to one of your partners, that taser?
My old taser?
Yes.
I believe they were just put in storage at the police department.
And those tasers were all yellow, right? The
Yeah.
handle, the top, the whole thing was yellow.
Yes, except for the battery pack, I believe that was black, and there was some
Okay.
markings on the side.
I'm going to show you these tasers. Show you this taser.
Objection, Room, may you have a sidebar, please?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And at some point in time during the stop or right after it, did Officer Lucky do anything in connection with obtaining another squad car?
Yes, he called for a second car to come.
What is that about? What?
It would just be a backup officer. The registered owner had a warrant of some nature. It wasn't a bad warrant. It was just a regular petty warrant, which would still, you'd want a second officer. Or I guess in this case, a third officer. Officer Lucky and I are considered only one officer.
And why are you and Lucky just one officer?
Because he's in field training and he's a probationary employee.
All right. So did the third officer, Officer Johnson, arrive at some point in time?
Yes, Sergeant Johnson arrived.
And was that before you looked up in the computer about this driver of the vehicle? or after?
I don't know exactly when he arrived. I know Officer Lucky and I were Officer Lucky and I were discussing running the name he was given through some various systems.
Okay, and did you do that, you and Officer Lucky?
Yes.
Was there any correction that you told him about during this time that he shouldn't have put the name in one?
He had gone to the Minnesota, because the driver didn't provide him with any government-issued ID, he would have had to verify some information to run him properly in our system through TriTech. So you run them sometimes through Minnesota DVS with just a name and a date of birth. It'll give you a Soundex hit on various people with that either same name or common name with a date of birth.
So did you correct him on that?
We were talking about, I don't know if I corrected him on it, but
So what happened after that?
he would copy the OLN, which is a driver's license number, off the screen and then put it into our TriTech system, or CAD, and that would run him through the state for driver's license and warrants and other hits.
And did you find anything about the driver?
The driver came back with a suspended driver's license, gross misdemeanor, bench warrant for weapons, and protection order.
So a gross misdemeanor for weapons ordinance, what went through your mind, if anything, when you read that?
It would be concerning that there'd be a weapon on the person or in the vehicle.
And why would that be?
In my experience over 26 years, I have found guns in cars, either by accident or by them just sitting out in plain view.
And what about a person with a weapons warrant?
They're more likely to be carrying a weapon or have a weapon access to them.
So what about the temporary, was it a temporary restraining order that came up? Was that it? Or?
Yeah, I think they're called ex parte orders. It would be a temporary protection order until the parties would either have a court hearing in front of a judge to make it a permanent order.
And there would be a name of a female on that?
Yes, there was.
And was there a female in the Buick or in the automobile that was stopped?
Yeah, in the front. Yes, in the front passenger seat.
So after you learned that, did you also learn something? Did Officer Lucky tell you something about drugs or marijuana?
When he initially got back to the car, he told me there was a obvious smell of marijuana and some seedlings or shake residue on the center console and inside the vehicle.
Okay. So with all of that information, what did you do next?
We told Officer Lucky explained to Sergeant Johnson what was going on. I corrected.
Where was Sergeant Johnson? Was he in your squad car?
He was standing at my passenger door.
Go ahead.
And Officer Lucky was explaining to Sergeant Johnson what was happening and what he wanted to do. Officer Lucky only told Sergeant Johnson that he had a warrant, and I told Officer Lucky that he needed to tell Sergeant Johnson what the warrant was for. A weapons violation warrant would be cause for care and concern.
All right. And after that conversation, what happened, if anything, next?
We got out of the vehicle. Sergeant Johnson was going to the passenger side. And
Excuse me, don't mean to interrupt you. Back up a little, I'm getting ahead of me. What was the plan when you got out of your vehicle with Lucky and Johnson was outside? What was your plan?
The plan was for Officer Lucky to get the driver into custody for the warrant, and we'd further investigate with the female who she was and if she was the petitioner or the subject of the restraining order.
Were you required by policy and law in learning about that warrant to arrest the driver of that car?
Yes, it was an order of the court.
And with respect to the restraining order, or whatever you called it, did proper police procedure that you knew of for 26 years required to find out who that lady was?
Yes.
And why would that be?
It's my duty to find out who she is to make sure she's not in harm's way. There's been times when that hasn't happened and somebody has ended up killed because that wasn't followed.
So now we're at the Buick. It's a Buick car, white car.
It's a white car.
And now we're at the white car, and you three went up to it, correct?
Yes, Sergeant Johnson went to the passenger side. He went up the passenger side to provide cover.
And what does provide cover mean?
keep an eye on the occupants of the vehicle, and just to monitor what's happening outside in the world. See if people are walking up on you or things go wrong.
And where were you located?
I was towards the left rear corner of the car.
And where was Officer Lucky?
He was advancing to the driver's door.
And how, by the way, before this, how long had you known Officer Lucky?
I think we were on our 5th shift.
And he was pretty new arrival, was he? Or
I believe he was in 2nd phase maybe, but he had been a police officer before.
okay, what does second phase mean?
He wasn't in his initial 4 weeks, he was in the start of his second 4 weeks.
And you testified you knew at least back then that he had come from another police department, correct?
Yes, I think he worked at 2 previous agencies and he was an explorer.
Okay. Now let's go back to when you three arrived at the white car. We've already said where you're located. Officer Lucky was at the driver's door, is that right?
Yes, he would have been standing behind the post between the driver's door and the rear passenger door.
What do you mean by that, standing behind the post?
He wouldn't have been directly in front of the door because that would be unsafe approach.
And this was this a warm day? Was the window down? Remember?
I don't know if the window was down or not.
Okay. But in any event, where were you standing again?
At the left rear corner.
And did you hear what Officer Lucky said?
Yes, I heard him ask the driver to step out of the vehicle a couple of times.
And did the driver step out of the vehicle finally?
Finally, he asked Officer Lucky a couple of times what was going on, and Officer Lucky said he would explain to him.
When he got out of the car?
Yes.
And so did the driver get out of the car?
Yes.
And what do you remember happening next?
Officer Lucky had him turn around, and I think he was still asking what was going on. Sergeant John,
Who's he?
the driver,
Go ahead.
and Sergeant Johnson and Lucky told him he was under arrest, and I told him he had a warrant.
Okay, so who said he was under arrest first?
Sergeant Johnson, I believe.
And Sergeant Johnson testified here. You remember that?
Yes.
And after he said that, did Officer Lucky say he was under arrest too?
Yes.
And you heard that?
Yes.
And what did you say then?
I told him he had a I told him he had a warrant.
You just said warrant.
I think so.
Did you specify what kind of warrant, if you remember? If you don't.
I don't think I would have. It wouldn't have been in my normal.
Okay, so what happened after Johnson and Lucky said you're going to be handcuffed or you're under arrest, and you said that there was a warrant? What happened next?
Officer Lucky had him put his hands behind his back, and I noticed that in the driver's right hand was something. It was paper or something, and I took it out of his hand and had it in my left hand.
And you had that in your left hand?
Yes.
And then what happened next? Why strike that? When you did that, I take it you got closer to the driver?
Yes. I reached into the driver's hand and took out what he had in his right hand.
Right hand or left hand?
His right hand, and I held it in my left hand.
Okay. And what happened next?
Officer Lucky started to say something about, don't do that, don't tense up, stop doing that. And then it just went chaotic.
What do you remember happening after that?
I remember a struggle with Officer Lucky and the driver at the door. The driver was trying to get back into the car.
Well, he was trying to get back in the car. What did you do?
I went around Officer Lucky as they're trying to get back in the door. I'm between the door and Officer Lucky and the driver. And the driver's getting into the car.
And what happened next?
They're still struggling, and I can see Sergeant Johnson and the driver struggling over the gear shift, because I can see Johnson's hand, and then I can see his face.
And you knew Johnson for many years before this, is that right?
Yes.
And by looking at his face at that point in time, what did you interpret it to mean?
He had a look of fear on his face. It's nothing I'd seen before.
Did you say anything when you saw this? What did you do?
We were struggling. We were trying to keep him from driving away. It just went chaotic. And then I remember yelling, "Taser, taser, taser," and nothing happened. And then he told me I shot him.
Can you proceed or do you?
Yes, it's fine.
Okay. After the driver said you shot him, do you remember what you said, or do you? If you don't remember, did you look at the video and see what you said, or do you actually remember what you said? I guess is my question. Not with help from a video.
I don't remember what I said.
And what do you remember next, if anything?
They had an ambulance for me, and I don't know why. And then I was at the station. I don't remember a lot of things afterwards.
Do you remember saying something about prison?
No.
If you did say that, do you have any idea now why you would say that?
No.
Was the climate back then about police officers a little rough?
Objection, Your Honor.
The objection is sustained.
All right. You don't remember saying it,
No.
and you don't know why you said it.
No.
Do you remember the response that our Sergeant Johnson or Major Johnson gave you?
No.
And when next do you remember what happened, if anything, if you remember?
I remember getting an ambulance, and then I was at the station.
Okay. And you remember being in the ambulance, arriving at the station?
No.
You don't remember the
No.
station?
I remember getting to the station.
Once you got to the station, do you remember what happened next?
The next thing I remember is Officer Fricky was in the room with me
And where were you located? Do you remember that?
in the front office.
Okay. In the front office room, do you remember, were you sitting down, standing up?
I was on the floor.
And after that, at some point in time, did your husband show up?
Yes.
At what time do you believe, from back there, April 11th, at what time do you believe that your memory came back to you?
Probably when my husband got there. So much of it is missing.
After that night, and for the last few months, have you been in therapy?
Yes.
And did you still work as a police officer there?
No,
Did you quit?
I did.
And this was your career?
Yes.
And when did you quit?
A day or two after the incident.
And why did you quit?
There was so much bad things happening. I didn't want my coworkers, and then I didn't want anything bad to happen to the city.
And did you own a home in Anoka or Hennepin County at the time?
Yes.
You and your husband?
Excuse me.
The objection is relevant.
The objection is overruled.
Did you own a home, your family home, for years past?
Yes.
And did you sell it?
Eventually.
Before you sold it, did you move out of the state?
Yes.
And do you now live out of state?
Yes.
We have a moment, Your Honor.
You also had other items on that duty belt as well, correct?
Yes.
And as part of the training that you went through every year, they cover topics of all kinds of uses of force, right?
Yes.
Including the things on your duty belt and maybe other options that the department could use additionally, true?
Only the things I was assigned on my duty belt.
Okay. But in any case, that use of force training was a pretty key component of being an officer, right?
Yes.
You were trained about when you could use force, how much force to use, and what would be appropriate force. Fair?
Fair.
And not only were you trained on that, but you had a lot of policy that that dictated what you could and could not do in a particular situation, right?
Yes.
And you were also trained on the readiness aspects of use of force, right? Being ready to engage whatever force might be required, right?
Yes.
Including making decisions under stress, right?
What do you mean?
Well, you had a lot of scenario-based training, right?
Yes.
And in those situations, those scenarios were set up to be as close as they could be to real life, right?
I suppose.
So you would be trained to have to make decisions in the moment about what to do and what force to use, right?
Well, it was a training situation, so it was usually slow and meticulous and controlled.
Well, you did this year after year, right, for the entirety of your career, correct?
I think scenario-based training started later, probably the last 10 or 15 years.
Sure, but use of force training has been around for a long time, right?
Yes.
Because since you started as a police officer, you have, in some cases, had to use force, true?
Yes.
And there are limitations on how and when to use that force, right?
Yes.
So you've had training on that throughout your entire career, right?
Yes.
And as part of that process, the way that it's required for you to maintain your license is that you sign in and you sign off on attendance forms, and you basically, you have to be there, right? You can't not be there, right?
Right.
And every year you have a certain number of training hours that are required, right?
Yes.
And you said on direct that you participated and you were paying attention during all those trainings, true?
Yes.
And some of those trainings had classroom instruction, PowerPoints, things like that, right?
Yes.
Some of them also included reviewing policies and other documents, right?
Yes.
And then there was also the hands-on training with the practical components, things like using drawing weapons, things like that, right?
Yes.
And over the course of your career, you completed many, many, many hours of training, right?
Yes.
And in terms of credit hours, we're talking somewhere in the ballpark of 1,700 credit hours. Does that sound right?
I don't know the number of hours, but if that's what you have, that would be probably right.
No reason to dispute that your training hours would have been in the thousands of hours over that 26-year career, right?
Yes.
You indicated that there weren't tasers available when you first started at Brooklyn Center, true?
No, they came in the early 2000s.
Okay. But in 1996, you had a firearm, right?
In 1995, yes.
Sorry, 95, and then you were sworn in 96, right?
No, I was sworn in February 27, 1995.
Okay. So in 95, when you first started, you had a firearm available to you.
Yes.
And you were trained to use that firearm.
Yes.
Trained how to handle it, right?
Yes.
Trained how to load it and unload it.
Yes.
Trained how to draw it,
Yes.
right? And fire it. And how to safely handle it, yes?
Yes.
And that included when not to fire it, right?
I suppose.
And that training started at the beginning of your career, you said in 95, but continued every year up until the time you resigned, right?
Yes.
Now, you indicated that tasers came later, but you were first trained on using a taser in 2002, correct?
If that's what the documents say, I'm not sure when they came out.
And if the documents say you were trained in 2002, you then would have been trained every year thereafter, right?
Yes.
And you started carrying a taser on your duty belt regularly as of 2005, right?
Yes.
But at a minimum, in addition to all the other training you had, you would have had taser training year after year for at least the last 19 years, right?
Yes.
And the taser training that's required, you saw the documents that were in court, also requires not only it requires review of policy, right? The taser policy, right?
Yes.
And it also requires practicing those reaction side draws, correct?
Sometimes.
All right, if we could put up Exhibit 334, please, the last page. I'm going to put on the screen what's already been admitted as Exhibit 334. And we're going to scroll down to the very last page and highlight the subsection C, please. So, as part of the taser policy includes that all training should include performing reaction hand draws or cross draws to reduce the possibility of accidentally drawing and firing a firearm. That's part of the policy, right?
That's what it says.
And that's part of what you're trained to do, correct?
We didn't always we aren't always drawing our tasers from our holsters. A lot of times we were in plain clothes during training.
Okay. Well, your policy that you're required to abide by, that you signed off on, requires that you perform reaction hand draws, true?
During the training, yes.
It also includes the reason for that, right?
Yes.
And that's so that you reduce the possibility of accidentally drawing and firing a firearm, right?
Yes.
And we can take that down. Part of the reason for that is weapons confusion, right?
Yes.
And that was known in the field and has been known for a number of years. True?
I guess.
Well, you were trained on it, right?
We talked about it.
It was part of your PowerPoints, correct?
Yes.
You were made aware during PowerPoint after PowerPoint after PowerPoint that drawing and firing the wrong weapon can happen, right?
We were told it wasn't something that they expounded on.
You were told that.
Yes.
And you signed documentation every year you were certified acknowledging that you knew the risks, received and reviewed the materials required for you to carry that taser, correct?
Yes, I signed the document.
Okay. Now, in terms of the carrying of these weapons, reaction side means what for you?
That'd be my left hand.
Okay. You're right-handed?
Yes.
So carrying a taser, you have done for years on your left side, correct?
Yes.
And your firearm you carry where?
On my right side.
How many years have you carried your firearm and your taser that way?
My firearm for 26 years and my taser, according to your documents, for 19.
So as long as you've had that taser, you've carried it on your left side, correct?
In the beginning, I carried it on my right side in a drop holster.
And when did you switch?
When we were given new holsters?
And when would that have been?
I don't know.
Okay. But far before 2016, you saw the images that were up in court. Long before that, you were carrying your taser on your left side, correct?
Yes.
Years and years, right?
Yes.
We talked a little bit about reality or scenario-based training. When you go through those trainings, you have available to you all the options that would be on your duty belt, right? Although inert for the purposes of training, right?
Yes.
And the purpose of that training is to try to recreate real life stressful situations as best as possible to practice making those types of decisions in the moment. Fair?
Fair.
Let's talk a little bit about your taser. You'd agree that the Taser 7 that you have and the taser you had before that has a safety mechanism on the side of it, right?
Yes.
And you have to flip it up to arm the taser.
Yes.
And when the taser is on and armed, it beeps, right?
I don't know if it beeps.
There's a display screen that turns on.
Yes.
And then there are two lasers with the Taser 7 that appear on your target, right?
Yes.
A green one for the top probe, right?
I believe so. It was a new taser.
And a red one for the bottom.
I would guess so, yes.
Well, you were trained on it, right?
Yes, but it was a while back.
Well, you were
Been on.
trained in March of this year on that taser, correct?
Yes.
And you have to successfully operate and handle that taser in order to be certified to use it, correct?
Yes.
And you went through that hands-on process of turning on that taser and safely handling that taser in order to be certified, correct?
Yes, in March.
In March. And before that, you had an X26P, correct?
Yes.
And that taser also had a laser and a safety and things like that, right?
Yes.
The screen that turned on.
Yes.
And the taser, and that was the taser that you had been carrying for years before, right?
Yes.
Very similar to the Taser 7 in that way.
Similar but different.
All right, so I'm going to put on the screen next to each other, please, Exhibits 210 and Exhibit 212. Now, this is a picture, side-by-side pictures of you on April 11th, correct?
Yes.
And your taser is pictured on the left side of your duty belt, correct?
Yes.
And that's the way you'd been carrying it for years and years, correct?
Yes.
And your firearm you carried on the right side of your duty belt, right?
Yes.
And you'd agree that the standard procedure for a reaction side, left hand draw for your taser in this case, would be to draw that weapon with your left hand, correct?
Yes.
All right, you can take that down. You were asked some questions on direct about spark testing, the function test of the taser. The policy says that you should do that before the beginning of every shift, right?
Yes.
And you didn't do it the last 2 shifts that you worked, correct?
That's what the documents say.
Right. You didn't do one for the last 4 of your last 10 shifts that you worked, in fact, correct? If that's what the documents say.
Which dates?
You didn't do it on March 27th, correct?
I guess.
You didn't do it on March 28th.
Your Honor, I object to this cross-examination if she doesn't know. She should
All
have-
right.
she should have
Okay,
a-
one word objections, please. If she doesn't know, she can say she doesn't know.
If the documents show that you didn't do a spark test 4 of your last 10 shifts, you have no reason to dispute that, right?
No.
And the day of this incident on April 11th, you didn't do a spark test that day, right?
No. According to the documents.
And even though, that day was a slow and uneventful day at the beginning of the day, right?
I don't know. I don't have a log.
Well, you told Dr. Miller that that day started as a slow and uneventful Sunday, right?
I don't know if I did or not.
Council sidebar.
Now, you testified that you have never deployed your taser or your firearm while on duty out on the street, correct?
Not that I recall. I know for sure my firearm.
Okay. But you have drawn your taser multiple times while on duty, correct?
Several times.
And you said that you did that as a way to de-escalate. I believe that was your testimony on direct.
Yes.
And approximately how many times did you pull your taser but not deploy it while on duty?
For de-escalation, maybe a few times.
Now, there are a couple times that you pulled your taser and didn't deploy it. One was in 2013, correct? No reason to dispute that it happened once in 2013 at least?
I would guess no reason.
There was a situation where one of your colleagues, a former officer, was hanging on the back of an individual, and you pointed the taser at him but didn't tase him because you would have tased your fellow officer. Is that right?
If it's the one I'm thinking, yes.
And instead of
She was on his back.
deploying your taser, you called for extra help, correct?
Yes, and we probably continued to fight with him.
You never deployed your taser then.
No.
There was another incident in 2016 where someone was not complying with commands to place them under arrest, right?
I don't know what event you're talking about.
Well, in this case, there was an individual who was struggling, a female individual. She didn't want to get in handcuffs, and then one of the officers took her down to the ground by force, correct? And you pointed your taser but didn't deploy it, right?
If that's what the documents say. I don't recall the incident.
Okay. But you recall that you have drawn your taser and not fired it in your 26-year career.
Yes.
All right, I'd like to talk a little bit more about April 11th. So, on April 11th, you were serving as an FTO, right?
Yes.
And you said that you have done that for 10 or 15 years.
For many years. I don't remember when I got certified, but it's been many, many years.
Okay. And you said that on direct, I believe your testimony was that you had knowledge to impart and that mentorship skills that made you suited for that job, right?
Yes.
So you were serving as Officer Lucky's FTO on April 11th. How long had you been his FTO?
I believe it would be 5 shifts. It would have started the Monday after Easter Sunday.
All right, so those were just some of the highlights from Kim Potter on the stand, and jury deliberations are set to begin once again. Final day before the holiday break. Hi, everyone. Mike Page here. Thanks so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. I want to go out to my colleague, Daytona Everett, did this interview with Fox 9's Paul Bloom about yesterday's no verdict and what today could bring.
Break it all down for us. I want to bring in Fox 9's Paul Bloom joining us live from Minnesota. Paul, another day, still no verdict.
Radio silence today from the courthouse, Daytona. We've been staring at that clock you showed your viewers on the way to break there most of the day. Also got a couple shots of the courtroom seal, but beyond that, nothing. Late yesterday, of course, we got a couple questions from this jury. They wanted to handle the gun. Kim Potter's gun was zip-tied in an evidence box. They wanted to kind of hold it. As we understand, the judge gave permission for that. And then obviously the other question, and much more significant question, was that they were struggling yesterday to reach consensus and seemingly to indicate there was at least something deadlocking this panel of 12. And without hearing anything from them today, nothing but to assume that they're still stuck on something here. Of course, Kim Potter facing 2 charges. They need unanimous verdicts on both counts. And frankly, we just don't know. Only the 12 people in that deliberation room know what's happening on the 18th floor of the Hennepin County Government Center. And at this point, we've got nothing, and we've got Christmas Eve and the Christmas weekend looming just now a day or two away. So we're just, like all of you, waiting word from the courthouse.
So, Paul, we had up on the screen right there what Kim Potter is facing right now, 2 different charges. Let's kind of go into that. She is facing 15 years in prison at this time, right?
That is the max, the statutory max on manslaughter 1, more appropriately just based on sentencing guidelines and my knowledge of the case. If she were convicted on that top count, the standard sentence is 7 years. With somebody with no criminal record. But of course, the state here, if they do get a conviction, they have put in a motion for an upward departure, so taking it up beyond those 7 years, so perhaps bringing 15 into play. I have no idea. But first and foremost is getting a verdict. Of course, first-degree manslaughter involving recklessness with the handgun. And then the second count, manslaughter in the second degree, that involves creating sort of her being culpably negligent, creating, not meaning to, but creating a dangerous circumstance that obviously led to the death of Dante, right? So 2 counts. This jury's deliberating. We don't know if they're stuck on 1 count, both, if it's 6-6 or if it's 11-1. We just don't know.
Right, exactly. Like you said, there's 12 people on this jury. There's 6 men, there's 6 women, there's 3 people of color. And yesterday there was thoughts that maybe they're deadlocked and that they wouldn't be able to make a decision, even asking the judge about that. Well, let's say they do make a decision because, Paul, we talked yesterday, tomorrow is kind of their last chance before the week ends. They're not going to be doing deliberations on Friday for Christmas Eve. What's kind of the procedures that are in place right now? There's going to be press conferences, right, that are set up. Everyone's kind of on hold right now.
Right, those press conferences, we know the Attorney General's office, who's prosecuting the case, is prepared 30, 60 minutes after a verdict to speak, but obviously that very much depends on what Judge Chu decides, and it really is Judge Chu's decision. Now, she did tell these jurors during jury selection, I think at the very beginning as well, she repeated herself, but that they would not deliberate if it came to this over Christmas Eve, which is Friday. It is the county holiday in Hennepin County, the day before Christmas, the 24th. And she told them at that point she would send them home and have them come back the next week. Now, just from an analysis perspective, I find it hard to believe that she would actually do that, and that these jurors are sequestered. They haven't gone home. They've had limited contact with the outside world. They're family members. They're in a hotel. They deliberate amongst themselves. If you send 12 home, you know, the pressures, the conversations, where have you been for the last 3 weeks? The Potter trial comes up. I just see the potential for jurors becoming tainted. So the question is, if they go another 8-10 hours tomorrow, and you're talking 40 hours of deliberations through the week and no verdict, is that when Judge Chu finally calls a mistrial, a hung jury? We just don't know. I will tell you, court administration, the folks who kind of organize the courthouse around the judge's decision, has started planning for contingencies that there could be deliberations into next week. But again, that is not at the order of Judge Chu. My understanding from sources at the courthouse is they are just preparing for everything, but again, prepping for the potential that jurors would indeed come back next week to potentially finish the job.
Paul, just to clarify, because we've been saying that the jury is sequestered right now, so they would be able to go home to their friends and family for the holidays.
No, and yes, they are sequestered right now, but she had promised them as they sat, and they worried, right? The jury selection was a month out before Christmas. She had promised them that if they reached that point, they would be allowed to go home. And that's why I'm saying, if she does stick to her word and releases them and sends them home, all of a sudden this sort of lockdown situation of these jurors, they have no control over conversations, what happens,
right,
you know, family gatherings, celebrations. So no, she would have to basically lift her sequestration order to allow them to leave over the Christmas holiday, which we have understood that was her thinking. But again, there's still another full day of deliberations likely to come tomorrow before we start really locking that potential in, but just something to keep on the radar as we look ahead.
Got it. So that's yet to be determined at this time.
Yet to be determined, yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, anything else to be noting going into tomorrow?
No, I mean, again, I wish we could provide more. We've had pool reporters inside the courthouse. We've just gotten a couple notes that they saw Aaron Eldridge, the Assistant Attorney General, prosecuting the case, kind of taking a lunch break. Matthew Frank, the lead prosecutor, stretching his legs. But literally, we've had no other updates, not a single peep, not a sign of this jury, not a sign from Judge Chu. So absolutely nothing, basically, out of this lockdown courthouse.
All right, Paul, and I'm taking a look from inside of the courtroom where the...
That was Fox 9's Paul Bloom breaking it down from yesterday's. Really no action in the jury deliberations. We will see what happens today. You're watching Live Now from Fox, everybody. We are going to slide away for a quick 2-minute break. Stay right here with us, because when we come back, we're going out to Russia. We got the Russian President Vladimir Putin giving his annual news conference. Live look right now at Chicago's famed O'Hare Airport, International Airport there, as travelers getting ready to fly out to their family and friends right before Christmas. You're watching Live Now from Fox, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us here today. We truly appreciate it. I'm your host, Mike Page. Always great to be here with you. Let's go out. Like we always say, hey, we are worldwide. We don't just do news across the country. We do it all over the world. Let's go out to Russia right now, where we have the Russian President Vladimir Putin giving his annual news conference.
И не публично. Каждый из нас, во всяком случае, председатель правительства, на котором лежит огромный...
You know, each of us, like the Prime Minister, who is responsible and in charge, and he rings me up and says, I'm going to this and that place, but I'll be in touch always. So, as regards trips to Siberia, you know, I've been going there since the start of the aughts. People would ask me where I want to live, in St. Pete or in Moscow, but I like Siberia. It is a unique ecosystem. And, you know, it is the golden reserve of Russia, are Siberians, in terms of their values and moral qualities. Definitely, every society is a motley horde, but still. As regards criticizing, chastising, or praising someone, I don't have anyone I favor in a particular way. if I see that someone starts underperforming or starts skirting some things, getting around some things, I always indicate that. I don't have any favorites, and I actually try to guarantee that there is the proper attitude towards the issues that we discuss and resolve. And as regards the bonus, yes, I believe that as a result, as an outcome of their efforts to overcome the pandemic, some of the members of the executive office and the ministers deserve a bonus. But, you know, in this case, we should not judge on a case-by-case basis, but rather assess the overall efficiency of the government. You know, we shouldn't earmark one individual too much and neglect others. But, you know, 5 pennies would not be enough. So, anyway, the team's work must be assessed. It's not about the individual performance, although this also should be done, and I have been doing that, believe me. But like saying that this man is good and this man is bad would be a wrong thing to do, because it is not about whether this individual is good or bad. The main thing is to accomplish our goals, is to be efficient. If we accomplish that, including myself, it's good. If not, it means that we are underperforming. Just some international media. I saw Raya, the Italian colleagues. Thank you.
Итальянское телевидение.
Sergio Baini, Italian TV. How much the relationship between Russia and Italy has changed under Mario Draghi premiership, and whether Italy can act as a broker between Russia and the EU? Well, our relations, as far as I feel them, I mean the bilaterals between Russia and Italy, well, has been like a model one, or it's quite sustainable, a good relationship which is non-partisan in nature. Irrespective of the political party in power in Italy, we follow in the footsteps of Mr. Berlusconi, who advocated for a better relationship between Russia and NATO. He initiated a number of long-term projects, including the SME cooperation. And that continues and goes on despite the specific party in power. So this national consensus is key to the relationship between Russia and Italy. Italy is a NATO and an EU member state, but still that doesn't prevent us from working in the context that we want. And so Mr. Draghi and I keep in touch. We speak over the phone in a favorable and benevolent way. We talk some of the things that are of interest for the Italian Republic to develop our ties. And definitely, given the good relationship between us, Italy probably could play a part in normalizing the relationship, including in the talks that are now planned between Russia and NATO. I can see SMA, which is a spinal and muscular atrophy. So that I saw a sign of a heart, and we'll come back to you later. Will you raise your heart sign higher? It is P2. I apologize. Probably this may be also appropriate. I come from Bashkortostan. My name is Gulnaz Aybul, and we love our city, the capital of Bashkortostan, the city of Ufa. And recently you signed a decree to commemorate 450th anniversary of our city. So I want to know what support the Federal Center will provide to us. As you know, when it comes to a birthday, we adorn ourselves. So, and definitely would like to have the high-profile celebrations. But it's not about round dances or any festivities. What we want is to have good infrastructure, new buildings, and good roads. So I wonder what support the Federal Center and you can render us. And are you preparing a surprise, and are you going to come? Well, thank you for the invitation. I'll try to be there. Ufa is a unique destination. It is a unique place in the Volga region. It has also always been one of the centers of the Islamic community. And as regards the anniversaries, it's not incidental that we have come up with this document, and together with the regional authorities we'll decide what the priorities are. And I would like to come back to what was said about your colleagues on the families with many children. We don't need additional resources. What we need is to use the ones that have been allocated to develop infrastructure, to keep a good pace of road construction, and bolster culture and other sectors. Probably we should redistribute funds so that Ufa could be well prepared for the anniversary as it deserves. Well, if you need additional funding, definitely we may grant that too. We'll talk with your colleagues. Yes, thank you, Mr. President. And there is a proposal. Salavat Yulayev is a hockey team who was well known. Why not hold a hockey championship in Ufa? Salavat Yulayev is a top-notch hockey team, but with respect to the World Cup or World Championship, as far as I know, the next one will be held in St. Pete, but that also depends on the International Ice Hockey Federation too. So St. Petersburg and Ufa are a way apart from each other, but definitely Ufa is capable of having and hosting a highest class international sports event. We'll think it over. Thank you. Over there. The back stalls. So with the spinal muscular atrophy, well, why not give the floor to the... Very good day, I'm Albert Musin, Yekaterinburg. I have two topics. SMA is the second, but my first priority is to support the students' games, so that the students' games would take place as scheduled, and we have brought you a ball with the autographs of the best athletes, the wrestlers, the racers, and others. Well, we hope you'll receive this ball with their signatures. Well, now that you have mentioned that, definitely I'm sure to receive it. And the second topic is the SMA. A major development happened. The golden jab.
All right, we are leaving Russia, going out to breaking news right now in Texas. This is in Baytown, Texas right now. Major refinery fire happening right now, and you're taking a look here at this fire here. This is near Houston. Some injuries are feared. Exxon confirmed that a fire occurred at the facility, which houses a chemical plant and a 560,000 barrel per day oil refinery. A major industrial accident being reported there by ExxonMobil's Baytown, Texas plant near Houston may have resulted in 4 injuries, the Harris County Sheriff said early on Twitter today. ExxonMobil confirmed that a fire occurred at the facility, which houses a chemical plant and a 560,000 barrel per day refinery, according to Reuters. Baytown is about 26 miles east of downtown Houston. ExxonMobil provided the following statement, saying a fire has occurred at the Baytown refinery. Our fire teams are working to extinguish the fire. We are conducting personnel accounting. Our first priority remains the safety of people, including our employees, contractors, and the surrounding community. As a precaution, we are beginning to conduct air quality monitoring at the site and fence line. We are cooperating with regulatory agencies. We deeply regret any disruption or inconvenience that this incident may have caused the community right here. And we're taking a live look right now as they try to combat this fire right now and battle it right now. But as always, we bring you the live news, breaking news headlines, all in the mix right here. When there is breaking news, we got you covered, of course, right here on Live Now from Fox, everybody. We'll keep this shot as long as we have it here as we go now into breaking news mode, giving you this update right here of this refinery. Get you some other updates right now as I continue to get them in right here to our newsroom, worldwide headquarters right now, providing you all of the updates as officials continue to investigate after 4 people injured here at the ExxonMobil Baytown complex, happening about 1 a.m. this morning here. At this time, emergency vehicles and smoke may be noticeable in the community. We are coordinating with local officials and working to resolve this issue as soon as possible. Residents in the area said that they heard a loud boom when the incident occurred. According to the Baytown Fire Department, the affected unit processes material with gasoline components. There were 4 people injured and transported to Memorial Hermann in stable condition, a spokesperson for ExxonMobil said during a press conference on Thursday morning. The rest of the workers and crew have been accounted for. There is no known impact to air quality, but they are monitoring it as a precaution, the ExxonMobil spokesperson said. Officials are going to be trying to provide updates as soon as they can. So let me just update this lower third right here. So we got everybody online that is coming and joining us, streaming around the country and, of course, around the world, joining in on this breaking news. All right, so we got that update going right there for you. I'll continue to try to look for more news and updates right here as we continue to play it out all in real time. It's one of the great components here about Live Now from Fox is as soon as we get some visuals and some other story updates, we go with it. We just bring it to you live and direct as it's happening. You know, there's a lot of news that is streaming right now around the country and around the world. The problem with that is, and I feel is, it's still, it feels like if you were just still watching it on TV where everything is boxed up and packaged nicely, and they rarely go to live events just because that would break up the rhythm of something that they already pre-produced. Here, we come in with a blank slate every day, pretty much every hour. We have a blank slate. We say, okay, we know some stuff is going to be happening, but we thrive on breaking news. So as soon as it happens, we just rip up things that we've had and go with it right here. And this is exactly just another example of that we are showing to you right here, of course, on Live Now from Fox. I'm going to reach out to our station there, Fox 26 in Houston, in just a moment to see if we could get some updates as well. But we are controlling this all for you, bringing you the live events as they are happening in real time. If you're just joining us here, everyone, major fire happening now at the ExxonMobil refinery. 4 people unfortunately injured just days before Christmas, and they are in stable condition right now. That's the latest update that we got there. But this is continuing to be battled. It happened about 1 a.m. local time there. So it's going on for about 5 hours right now. Let's get you some other updates right here. So we know that at least 4 people injured, according to the Harris County Sheriff's Office. 1 victim was in critical condition but stable. 3 others hospitalized with non-life-threatening injuries. For now, no reports to evacuate or shelter in place. I'm also going to continue to see if we could get updates from ExxonMobil. I'm looking at their Twitter feed here as well. All right, we just got a fresh update about 2 minutes ago, everyone. I want to bring that to your attention. Our emergency response teams continue to work to extinguish the fire at our Baytown complex. Our first priority is people in the community and in our facilities. Air monitoring continues along the fence line. Available information shows no adverse impact at this time. No shelter in place has been called for our community and near neighbors. We deeply regret any disruption or inconvenience that this incident may have caused the community. We'll continue to wait for more updates, everyone. We're going to slide away for a quick 2-minute break. Stay right here with us. Live Now from Fox will continue. And just like that, everyone, we are back worldwide here for you on Live Now from Fox, just days before Christmas. Hi, everyone. Mike Page here. Thanks so much for joining us here today. Let's get back out to Baytown, Texas right now, getting you this update here of the breaking news, a major fire at the ExxonMobil refinery. There are 4 people injured. We now know 1 in critical but stable condition, the other in stable condition right now. So this is the look right here. This is what we can tell you at this moment, everyone. The fire broke out about 1 a.m. local time, so it's been going on for about 5.5 hours right now. And the latest update from officials at ExxonMobil saying our emergency response teams continue to work to extinguish the fire at our Baytown complex. Our first priority is people in the community and in our facilities. Air monitoring continues along the fence line. Available information shows no adverse impact at this time. No shelter in place has been called for our community and near neighbors. We deeply regret any disruption or inconvenience that this incident may have caused the community. So it was reported at around 1 a.m. local time there that the fire occurred. At this time, emergency vehicles and smoke may be noticeable to the community. We are coordinating with local officials and working to resolve this issue as soon as possible. That was the first alert that was put out from ExxonMobil as soon as this incident started up here. And we continue to bring you always the very latest right here on Live Now from Fox. Let me get some other updates here for you as we continue to search for them at this hour here. So the major update, though, unfortunately, 4 people injured during this explosion. There were reports there that people from that lived near this refinery heard a very large and loud boom and then saw massive amounts of fire coming out here. So this is about 30 minutes outside of Houston, everybody. We are getting also reports that one of the 4 that was injured was life-flighted with burns. Oh, not a good situation at all. And our heart goes out to everybody, all the family and friends that know somebody that work here, and as they are probably at this hour trying to come in contact with their loved ones to make sure that they are okay, everyone. But now as Sky Fox is able to pull out a little, you're able to see just what almost sunrise near Houston is looking at, like with this situation that is happening with the major fire at the ExxonMobil refinery. And we appreciate all our viewers from around the country and around the world joining live with us right now. Breaking news coverage continues. And I'm your host, Mike Page, as we continue to look for new updates all around the story. But as we can see here, it looks like crews are getting a good handle on the situation right now. When we first went to it, we still saw flames coming out, but right now, you're seeing a lot more white smoke, and of course, you're still seeing flames, though. Bottom left of your screen right there, right by the ticker, you're still seeing flames rip out there. So crews are going to be busy today working this refinery fire. Obviously, investigation will happen as soon as really the dust settles, like they say, or I like to say the smoke settles in a situation like this. But we'll continue to wait here for more updates here for you. This is coming in Baytown, Texas, just about 30 minutes away from Houston, everybody. And we wish we had better news to share with you, but here on Live Now from Fox, we bring you the news as it's happening in real time, and sometimes that is the bad news as well. So the big story here, though, 4 people injured, one of them in critical condition with some life-threatening burns to their body, 3 others in stable condition at area hospitals right there. But we continue to hold out hope for everyone that was injured there. And when you hear about an explosion at a refinery, obviously it could have been much, much worse than this. But they will have an investigation to see what exactly has happened right here. But okay, now we are learning a little bit more. ExxonMobil saying all people are accounted for. They do have the 4 injured there, but there are no outstanding people at this moment here. So that is a big news update right here that we're able to provide you right here on Live Now from Fox. That one just coming down the wire there. So nobody unaccounted for. They got everybody that they know of. They were able to get out of the refinery, out of this facility complex. And of course, we're thinking about the 4 people that are injured at this moment. 1 in critical condition, but we're holding out hope here and hoping for a Christmas miracle for them at this very, very moment. Sky Fox doing a great job of just showing us the situation here that is happening at this refinery in Baytown, Texas. We are live for you right here on Live Now from Fox, breaking it all down for you in real time as it's happening here. So this explosion happened about 1 a.m. local time, everybody, just about 30 miles east of Houston. Okay, in a statement, the Harris County Sheriff's Office said deputies were responding to the incident and that some injuries had been reported. That's what we already know. In a separate statement, Harris County Sheriff Eddie Gonzalez said that the 4 people have been injured, with 3 taken to a hospital by air ambulance. A 4th person was also transported to a hospital. Gonzalez said initial airport reports suggested that some type of explosion had occurred inside the plant. He said that for now, there were no indications that nearby residents would need to evacuate the area or shelter in place. And speaking at a news conference earlier this morning, Rowan Davis, a refinery manager at the ExxonMobil site, said that all 4 people in the hospital appeared to be in stable condition. He said that all other personnel at the site had been accounted for. Davis said he could not confirm whether an explosion had taken place at the facility. Several residents took to Twitter describing the explosion strong enough to rattle their homes. Explosion at Exxon, one social media user wrote. It rumbled my apartment and knocked my pictures off of the wall. Well, that's another thing that we are going to be monitoring. In a statement, ExxonMobil said its emergency response teams were still working to extinguish the fires, and that's exactly what we're seeing right now. The company said its industrial hygiene staff are monitoring the air quality at the site and fence line. It said that so far there appeared to be no adverse impact due to the fire. The facility houses a chemical plant and a 560,000 barrel per day oil refinery. The Baytown Fire Department said its crews has not responded to the incident. Also, everybody, we are giving you this update. Just about 15 minutes ago, the ExxonMobil Baytown area official Twitter account putting this out, saying our emergency response teams continue to work to extinguish the fire at our Baytown complex. Our first priority is people in the community and in our facilities. Air monitoring continues along the fence line. Available information shows no adverse impact at this time. No shelter in place has been called for our community and their neighbors. We deeply regret any disruption or inconvenience that this may have caused the community. So we'll keep an eye on this as well. You're watching Live Now from Fox, everybody. We are going to step away for another quick 2-minute break. Stay right here with us. Live, raw, and always unfiltered here for you. Welcome back, everyone, here to Live Now from Fox. We continue to break down the breaking news right here on Live Now from Fox of this major fire at the ExxonMobil refinery. 4 people injured. And you're looking at a live look right now from Sky Fox, Baytown, Texas, just about 30 miles east of Houston there. So we appreciate all our viewers from across the country and around the world joining us here in real time, everybody. We appreciate that so much for being here in real time with us as we break this down for you. 4 people injured. We know that 3 people are in stable condition. 1 person, unfortunately, life-flighted in critical condition with some burns. That is from the latest reporting there, but a great job by Sky Fox zooming out and really just showing us this area. Let's listen in right here. Looks like we might have a report here. And we saw the traffic reported there. Thought we might have had a little report there. That's how raw we are, everyone. We just bring you these live feeds as they come in to our newsroom right here. I mean, these are the feeds that you get, and we push it out right here for you. Let's go back out to the live look right now as crews look like they're getting a really good handle on this fire that could have been caused by some sort of explosion. That's what social media users have been saying. They said, hey, we heard some sort of rattle. We heard a boom. Some of pictures fell off of people's walls. That's what was reported on social media there as well. So obviously a big investigation will be happening. Multiple people injured here, and we continue to wait for more updates. Let's continue to look for more updates as we get them right here into our newsroom, providing you this coverage. If it's happening live, it's happening now. It's a good chance it's happening on Live Now from Fox, everybody. Just 30 minutes outside of Houston is this oil refinery in Baytown, everybody. So this is how it all happened. This is what the reporting says. About 1:00 a.m. local time, this fire broke out, unfortunately hurting 4 people. ExxonMobil, though, says that everybody has been accounted for. So that is big because now we know that everybody was able to get out. The fire crews are on hand, and they know that the 4 people have been sent to the hospital, and still everybody's accounted for. What you don't want in these types of situations is having, 4 people injured and then, 25 people unaccounted for. Then you're in a world of hurt, and that is not what we want to hear right now. But this is the situation that is on hand right now, and we provide you this coverage in real time right here on Live Now from Fox. So let's break it down a little bit more for our viewers that are just coming in. It is still very early, getting close to 8 o'clock out on the East Coast, not even 5 o'clock out on the West Coast. So we're providing you all of these images here in real time. Of course, it's just past 6:45 local time there in Baytown, Texas. Fire broke out about 1 a.m. at the facility located on the 5,000 block of Baytown Drive. Residents in the area said that they heard a loud boom when the incident occurred. According to the Baytown Fire Department, the affected unit processes material with gasoline components. There were 4 people injured and transported to Memorial in stable condition. A spokesperson for ExxonMobil said during a news conference on Thursday morning. 3 of the injured were taken to hospitals by life flight, but the 4th was taken by ambulance. Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez said the rest of the workers and crew have been accounted for. There is no known impact to air quality, but they are monitoring right now as a precaution. That's from the ExxonMobil spokesperson. But as you can see here, a way better handle right now on the fire than when we first brought this to you about 15 minutes ago. So that is some very good news right now, and we'll continue to follow it for you at every angle right here on Live Now from Fox, everybody. And so even when we saw those flames on the left corner of the screen now, looking a lot better now, looking like we're just seeing the lights here from the refinery pick up. And right now it looks like this could be almost wrapped up. Very good job by the officials there for breaking down this fire here and getting it under control. We're going to take our final break here of the hour. Stay right here with us. Live Now from Fox continues after this. Welcome back, everyone, here to Live Now from Fox as we continue to bring you the latest right here. We're going to go back out to Russia here. Vladimir Putin still giving his annual news conference. We'll listen a little bit more.
Look on a systemic basis into infrastructure and the countryside, or will it just do some patches? Of course, we are going to do that on a systemic basis. We have a special roadmap for that, and it'll get the necessary funding. We also have national projects that I have already mentioned throughout this press conference, and the national projects pay particular emphasis to the countryside. The countryside has been demonstrating very good progress over the recent years, and this has to be reflected and has to translate into social well-being and welfare of people who are responsible for the rising productivity, people who provide our country, our citizens, with the food essentials. I think I've already spoken about the program on rebuilding, reconstructing schools and building new ones, and I would like to say that the countryside is going to be the emphasis within this program, and I would like to ask that to be taken into account. You mentioned the internet. You said that the countryside sometimes is lacking some basic essentials, whereas the internet is provided. Well, of course, we have to think about essentials, but the internet should be there too, so that young people in the countryside can get the necessary education, get services through the internet, even in the most remote areas and rural areas. And as far as small towns and countryside towns go, additional funding is provided to address these tasks. This is a large-scale project, and of course infrastructure has to be developed. A great deal of money allocated for infrastructure will be funneled into the countryside. Yes, and Dmitry, the last question. Valery Samfirov, one of the veterans of the presidential pool. Mr. President, just a small clarification. There was a quiz. Who was the president who said that boycotting the Olympics was not the right thing to do? Was it Trump? No, it wasn't. My question is about the forthcoming year 2022. It seems as if it's not going to bring anything good. You are still going to keep everyone in the dark, in suspense, whether you're going to run for presidency once again. Maybe the pandemic is still going to continue to rage, and the restrictions brought about by the pandemic will still be there, and the WHO is going to find another reason not to recognize Sputnik V, and our Olympic team still will compete not under the Russian banner but under a neutral one. So what do you think the new year can give us as a source of optimism? You I think, mentioned that this joy should not be just a dim glimmer. No, we need something good, a source of optimism and joy. Yes, I think this source can be the implementation of our plans. This is everything we are doing. We want to improve the lives. Now, regarding potential internal political events like the elections, this is not something I'm thinking right now. A colleague of yours, Tatyan, lady, asks me about securing the interests of the pensioners, and this is something we have to be thinking about. If the inflation rates go up, we need to adjust the income of our pensioners. Yes, the pensions do grow, but promises we gave before have to be kept, and this indexation has to be on par with inflation rates, and this is something everyone has to remember at all levels of authority, municipal, regional, federal level. We need to ensure the best possible quality of life. The plans are gigantic, and we need to make good use of that for changes for the better. Happy or not, we need to do that, and I will nudge the government and the leadership of the country to work in this fashion, to move in this direction, to address the tasks on their agenda in the interests of the Russian citizens. Well, I think we need to give the chance to ask the last question to a woman, a lady. So, did you see anyone? Russia, culture? Yes, please, go ahead. The first row, please. At the center. Good afternoon. My name is Yana Muzika, Russia Culture TV channel.